This video is now in session, and we are back just in time for the Virginia and New Jersey governor's races, and we have a lot to talk about with this race, especially the Virginia's governor's race, because what we're seeing is a pretty big shift in terms of the polls of polls. So this is 538's, cumulative average of the leads that McAuliffe or Youngkin have, the two major candidates for the Virginia governor's race. And what has happened in recent days is that the lead of McAuliffe has kind of narrowed into 1.7, 1.5, and now, for the first time, we've seen that Youngkin is ahead of McAuliffe by 0.6 percentage points, and this is mainly because of a polling done by Fox News, where they polled 1,000 individuals, so it's a very large sample size, and what they found is that Youngkin was ahead by 1% among registered voters, and Youngkin was ahead 8% by likely voters. So for this kind of race where voter turnout is most likely going to be lower than usual, it's best to look at registered voters, because those voters are more likely to vote rather than likely voters who may have to register before voting. So plus 1%, that's still pretty bad for the Democratic Party. In fact, that's really bad because we saw in the 2020 election, in the presidential election, that Joe Biden won that race by more than 10 percentage points. He won it by double digits. And yet what we're seeing is that this race has become ultra competitive in the last few days, and has caused individuals like Barack Obama to campaign for Terry McAuliffe. And that's and the message that Obama brought was not really the best message that the Democrats could have, which is that we wanted to do more, but we weren't able to, because that's just how the process goes in Washington. But you should still vote for us because the other side is not good. That's a message that will increasingly not work for the Democratic Party. It worked for the 2020 election because Trump was a really historically bad candidate for independence. But if we look more towards a, future without Donald Trump as the president, what we'll see is that a lot of these races that weren't competitive will become competitive once again. And because of Biden's approval ratings, which has dipped over the past couple of weeks, a lot of these races will receive setback from Biden's approval rating. And the main issue is that nothing is being done in Congress. It's deja vu of 2008, which is that Democrats had a lot of things that they wanted to get done, like climate change, manufacturing, wages, pandemic relief, infrastructure, and all of those kinds of core issues, as well as taxes. But what they found is that lobbyists and individuals within the Big Tent coalition are not agreeing to those measures. And this is different from 2008 in that the majorities for the Democrats in the House and in the Senate are incredibly slim. It's 50-50 in the Senate, meaning that there's already a restriction of what kind of bills can be done by the Democrats. And you also have certain Democrats like Sinema and Manchin who would definitely object to a lot of the more progressive measures that the Democrats want to pass. In the House, there is a 222-seat majority by the Democrats that is four more than the majority needed, which means that they really cannot sacrifice any coalition within the Democratic Party. So if the moderates are against a bill, then that bill is dead in the House. If progressives are against that bill is dead in the House as well. So you have such a large chasm of ideologies in the Democratic Party to the point where it becomes hard for reconciliation and for individuals to come together to create bills. So because of that, we're not seeing much happen. And even for the things that are starting to move, like the budget bill and the infrastructure bill, overtones of socialism are coming, because what we saw in 2008 was that the Republicans expertly framed the Affordable Care Act and other provisions of the Obama presidency as socialist provisions. And what we're seeing here is that with increase in inflation, is that Republicans are once again using the argument of socialism in order to say that the Democrats should not be in power. So that is somewhat working in the Virginia governor's election. But what's also working is just not mentioning Trump. Glenn Youngkin, who's the Republican nominee, barely mentioned Trump throughout the race. He had somewhat questionable vaccine views and conservative and general more right-wing conservative views, but he constantly avoided the issue of Trump because Virginia, for him to win Virginia, essentially Youngkin recognized that he had to get more votes from the Fairfax suburbs and from the Richmond suburbs in order to have a chance of winning the 2021 election. And to do that, just don't mention Donald Trump because it's a divisive issue. So if you don't mention about it, because there's really no need to mention about it since it's not a core issue for day-to-day Americans, then Youngkin can avoid that issue altogether. Now, has he gotten very broad support from Donald Trump? Not really, but that doesn't matter because he still has the core Republican base of Trump voters and more moderate voters in the suburban areas. And that is why in the poll of polls, you can see that Youngkin is up ahead with just a couple of days left to go until the election occurs. So that's the state of play of Virginia's governor's race. If McAuliffe wants to win, he's going to have to ramp up his campaign, his get out the vote campaign. There's not really much he can do to change his image at this point because he has been seen as this pure establishment Democrat, especially because he is a white man who's in his older age and was also already the governor of Virginia. So what we're likely to see is that McAuliffe can't kind of fix his image issues, but he can try to get out the vote to avoid Youngkin from taking office. Now, what are the repercussions for McAuliffe and the Democratic Party of Virginia? Not much, because right now, the Democrats hold the power in the legislative area in the Virginia House of Delegates. What we see is that they control both the House, or I guess the Assembly, the General Assembly, and the Senate. So what that means is that for a governor like Youngkin, he will have to work with the Democrats no matter what. For that part, Virginia's governor's race doesn't matter too much. The only reason why it matters is if Democrats want some kind of pattern, and if also they want to show that they can still win in competitive elections and that they can get out the vote, because this race will be an indicator of what happens in 2022. We looked at other races like California's gubernatorial recall election and a bunch of special House races, but ultimately these structured elections, these established elections, are the ones that matter because they're not special elections and they're not elections of special circumstances. Virginia and New Jersey are elections. Their governor's elections happen regularly on the year of 2021. So it only makes sense that this is an indicator of 2022, especially because what we're seeing is that the trends of Youngkin and McAuliffe are following the trends of Biden's approval rating, which is going down, and as a result, Youngkin is going up. So we'll have to see what happens in the 2020 election, the 2021 election. We will do a forecast, or not a forecast, a prediction of this race on Tuesday, November 2nd, along with a prediction for New Jersey's governor's race. And then we'll also talk about New Jersey's governor's race. We also talked about that already. So if you want to watch that video, just go, and I guess I'll have the video at the end of this video. So, but until then, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.